Hi, this is Tiffany Marchink with the Medal of Honor podcast. I want to share a couple things with you about something I'm working on and just throw out some resources for you. One of the projects that I'm working on right now is a storyboard. That's the best word I know to come up with, but it's military related. So the purpose of a storyboard initially was used by Disney and maybe some older comic books where you had sequential pictures that, like, when you thumb through the book, it shows a character moving type thing. Comic books to tell a story. And so I remember also in elementary school, there was a teacher that you could, each student would have a different week. And that particular week, there would be a storyboard, and you would put the student would put up on there maybe their favorite color, some pictures of their family, their pet, just different things. Yes, she called it an all about me board. And so there was that all about me where it just had different things about the particular student on there. In the military, we have shadow boxes. So at the end of somebody's time in the military, whether it be 4 years or 40, there is a board, a shadow box that will have that person's awards and decorations on there, their name, time of service or times of service, dates of service, and it's pretty good. Just as a reminder of your time in the military. There's also like unit patches that can be put in there as well. Well, if there's a way, if you could imagine, storyboard meets Shadowbox, in that, like, if you are a service member or veteran and you've been in a USO, then you probably have seen this on the wall near where you come into the USO, where there will be this a huge, like the length and height of that particular wall, court board, where you can push in the regimental instinctive crest, the patches, unit identifiers, just different things. You can Velcro or sew on to this particular cloth or push pin in on this board. A lot of times these USOs will also have a frame, like a picture frame with a door or window on it containing command coins or challenge coins. So many times when a commander passes through, they will donate one of their command coins to that USO, and it'll be locked up in that coin box. So this way, every time you walk into a USO, you can see a representation of all the people that have shown up to that particular location. And it's interesting because sometimes you will find patches of units that you have been assigned to. And sometimes you'll see things that look interesting, but you've never seen before. And it's all branches of the military. So what does that have to do with my podcast? Well, I'm wanting to do a similar thing where people who have been a guest on the show send in something that's a representation of their particular time in service. So here's an example of one. This individual, this got his piece, sent me a bookmark. Matthew Lewis, he wrote the book Mission Transition. I guess so. I got his bookmark and his rank, lieutenant colonel in the Army. I also have of his book. It's kind of hard to see it, but yes, I have his book, Mission Transition. So if you are a service member looking at transitioning out of the military, that might be a good resource for you. But I digress. But since I'm on books, the first thing I received was this unit patch, from none other than Major General Mary Ed Eater. I think it's Eater. I hope I'm saying it right. She was a major general in the Army, and that patch was the unit that she last commanded before retiring. I've also gotten some coins, speaking of generals and such. This coin is, she's a 2-star general, still serving in the Army Reserves. She is assigned to a joint transportation unit. And this is none other than Sharon Fasano. Another coin. So I have people who come onto the podcast who maybe did not serve in uniform, but they might either be an immediate family member of somebody who served, or work in a position that serves the military and veteran community. That's who this person is. Her name is Cheryl Mason. She was previously the chairwoman of the Board of Appeals at the Department of Veterans Affairs. So that obviously the VA does serve the veteran community. She also has had a brother and a father that served in the military. When she was on the podcast, she shared about the impact of suicide, how both of them had died by suicide. So it was a problem back then when that happened with her family members, and it's still an ongoing issue that needs to be addressed, but that's a whole nother story. What else do I have? Marine Corps rank. I guess this is the male version that gets sewn onto the dress uniform. I have had several Navy SEALs on the podcast, and so I got the coveted trident. I know it's hard to see it because of the light reflecting on it, but this is a trident. There's also been several Air Force security forces, which the Army calls military police, who have been on the podcast. So there's this security forces patch that's a Velcro patch. And what else do I have here? Oh, yes. This one is pretty interesting, I think, too. Don't know if it'll show up. It's a camouflage bandana. And written on the bandana is Psalm 91. So there's a lot of times that we'll say people in the military who are not religious at all, they find God in the foxhole. You know, people say they find Jesus in the foxhole, find God in the foxhole, because your life is literally on the line. So yeah, so there's that. So those are just a couple of things that I have received from people, and I'd love to have something from you. Now, if you say, I haven't been a guest on your podcast, that's fine too. I definitely want something from people who were on the podcast so that it'll be a representation of the podcast. But a podcast isn't a podcast if no one's listening to it. So if you listen to the podcast, you follow it, if you're subscribed to this YouTube channel, I would love for you to send something in. Because again, it's a representation, not just the people who are speaking on the show, but the people who listen to it as well. And I will post it up on the, once I get more items in, I will hang it up on the wall, put it in a place, and just update you guys on social media or here on YouTube, whatever the case may be. Yeah, so that's that. And I will put in the show notes the address that I need you to send it to. Now, here's the other thing that has nothing to do with what I just shared. I mentioned, suicide is an ongoing issue. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. As a matter of fact, sometimes it seems to be getting worse. So I have a recommendation. If you are struggling with with thoughts of suicide, if you are struggling with a mental health issue, if you are struggling finding a job, physical issues, relational issues, if you're struggling with anything, reach out. I was on a podcast earlier today, and we talked about this podcast and about grit and mettle and perseverance. And I was asked a question that I've not been asked before, and I think it was a perfect question as it relates to this type of topic. When we're in the military, asking for help is not the easiest thing to do. Now, if we're deployed, well, before I even say that, too many times we like to say, I've got this, I can handle it. And that's a reflection of your grit, saying, I got this. But it also can be a reflection of pride. How so? Well, because we might find ourselves in a place where we think that we don't need to ask for help, because we feel like we've got this and I can handle it. But you get to a point sometimes where you realize you don't got it, you're not handling it, and you need some help. And there's nothing at all wrong with asking for help. So yeah, so my local VA is the Charleston VA, and I got this flyer, which obviously you can't see. I will try to post a picture of a couple of these flyers that I found. One of them is, it says Live Whole Health. And so there's a couple of resources on here. It has the website, the name of it, the QR code if you want to scan it, of different things that you can take advantage of as a veteran. If showing up to the VA is just not your thing right now and you hadn't gotten to that point, tap into one of these resources. Let's see, here's another one. So here's something that's interesting. I think a lot of times when we think about the VA, we think about, oh man, I have to go through all this red tape. Yes, there is red tape, but you can do it. You got that. I know you do. But there's also, like, we don't want to sit down and talk about our problems. But there's some other things. So again, I'll post these in the comments. At my local VA, they are doing Tai Chi classes. And so it says in here, veterans, are you aware that you can now request a consult to receive virtual Tai Chi classes? If you suffer from balance issues, pain, Parkinson's disease, reduced flexibility, PTSD, you have a mental health diagnosis, arthritis, COPD, osteoarthritis, high blood pressure, and any other issues, Tai Chi could be perfect for you. And it's done virtually, so you don't have to go anywhere. And so even for some of my appointments, I don't have to go anywhere. Some of them I have to physically show up to the hospital, whereas others I do virtually right here at my computer. This other flyer that I have, and again, these flyers are specific to my VA that they do. It's a bi-weekly virtual guided imagery class for veterans. Every other Monday starting at 3 p.m. Guided imagery is a technique using mental images designed to evoke sights, sounds, tastes, smells, movements, and images associated with touch, such as texture, temperature, and pressure, as well as thoughts and feelings that promote healing and well-being. So yeah, I mean, there are things that you can do to help you along, whether you don't feel like it's quite the time to start getting involved in the VA, or you're between appointments. Because I know I need that between appointments as well. If I just do some sort of like yoga that has nothing to do with the VA, and I have a yoga app on my phone, and I do some of these yoga stretches in the morning because I'm one of those people that my flexibility just does not exist. So doing this yoga helps me. And it helps me focus too. I also have an adult coloring book. This adult coloring book, if I find myself getting anxious or frustrated and my heart rate's gone high, I will sit down and I will grab my colored pencils and my coloring book and just color in it. It might sound cheesy, it might sound childlike, but if it works for me. Sometimes just going on a walk works for me. You have to figure out what works for you, because what works for one person may or may not work for you. But you have to look for something. You have to try things out. Many times, all we need is a listening ear. So if you have somebody that you trust, whether it's a friend or a family member, maybe reaching out to that person is what you need to do, to just talk. Just give them a call and say, hey, I need to talk. There's the veteran crisis line. There's a suicide hotline. There's military one source, or there's also an entity called Give an Hour, where you can have a free 1 hour counseling session that they end up scheduling for you. You might be able to get up to 3 of those. I'm not quite sure how that one works, but it's something that's available. So I know that's a lot, but I just want to encourage everybody to ask for help. Do your part and push through, and work on yourself to improve yourself. But just know that you can't do all of it by yourself. So all you have to do is ask for help. And if you feel like you don't have that friend or family member that you trust that you can talk to, there's nothing wrong with going to get professional help. If you have to go into the emergency room and say, hey, look, I'm having these thoughts, or I'm struggling with this particular thing, there's nothing wrong with that. Asking for help is indeed okay. So this is Tiffany Marchink. I'm going to sign off here for today. But just remember to take care of yourself, improve upon yourself, and send in any items that you have that I can add to this storyboard. Take care. Have a good one.